Good morning. We're continuing with this show, Morning Express. And if you've just joined us, you're right in time for our lifestyle chat. This morning, I'm joined by Dr. Philomena Wavinya Ndambuki, who is a psychologist, but she says that teaching is her first love. Yeah. Thank you for joining us on the program. Okay, and so today we're going to be talking about domestic violence. We've all seen the images. We've all heard about the 16 Days of Violence campaign, or rather the 16 Days of Activism. And today we want to understand the psychology of that. And I know you had asked me to say, you know, what psychology is, and I think you're best placed to define it and why it's so important in understanding our behavior, especially violent behavior.
Actually, you kind of have defined psychology. Because when we talk about psychology, we are thinking about two words. There is a psycho and the logos. And the word logos means logic, reasoning. Psycho means the mind. So many times when we define the word psychology, we say it's a scientific study of the mind and behavior.
Scientific study of the mind
and the behavior. Yeah, because usually what prompts somebody what prompts behavior of somebody originates from the mind.
Okay.
Somebody puts two and two together, lo and behold, they have done something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's begin with what has been widely spoken of in the last 3 weeks, which is the public humiliation of women through forceful stripping.
Yes.
What would lead someone to think that thought, proceed to do it, and then rally people around him to join him?
You know, there are two things here.
Okay.
There's the behavior, and there's also these like this. Let's talk about that stripping. I teach human sexuality, and when we talk about human sexuality, we are talking about the senses, sexual sensations. We are talking about the using of the 5 senses in sexuality. You know, people see, people you know, feel, you know, and then there is also the hearing and all that, the smell and all that kind of stuff. So here is a man who sees this lady, possibly according to him, inappropriately dressed, and then strips them naked. You see, now I see two things here: the emotional status of that person. You know, that the stripper, now the person who is stripping the other person, has got what I would call negative emotionality, very negative, because I don't think you would. I can't strip anybody. You see now, and then he is also meeting psychologically a sexual need. Because when I teach human sexuality, we talk about the erogenous zones of the body, parts of the body that would cause the other person who is normal biologically to be sexually aroused. Okay, then this person sees this lady. I don't want, you know, very very scantily dressed.
Yeah.
Probably the thighs are erogenous zones, and then they are exposed. Pwah, here they are, lo and behold. And then the person who is beholding this person is a male who is biologically set, you know, is normal, very normal. So now, what he's going to be doing, it's not that he's meeting a sexual need. He is psychologically internalizing the fact, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to me? You know, why are
Is it something that he can control?
Yes, of course. I was going to say why I would not do it, why you would not do it, why the other person would not do it, because you are self-controlled. You can choose. You choose. I'm not going to do this. But if you are automated in your thoughts, then you utajikuta tu umefanya. You will just find that you have done it, and then you say, lo and behold, what have I done?
Yes.
Can you imagine this guy who strips this woman, if by any chance he would know that their son would be watching them? Because I believe, you know, he could be married, and he's meeting, and then he wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it.
You know, self-control is a matter of choice. It's like saying 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to do this. But if you don't count, you know, your thoughts, then you will find yourself you have done something and you didn't really want to do it.
Okay, let's talk about how other people around you and your environment can get you into doing something that you don't want. You know, there are people who commit crimes, violent crimes, even that stripping that we're talking about, beating their wives, their children senselessly. And when you speak to them later, they say, I don't know what came over me. I feel like I couldn't control myself. But when they were in there with the crowds,
we call that group psychology. Group psychology is very powerful because it is like somebody suggests a thing. And again, I'll go back to what I said. Without thinking, unajikuta tu, you have gotten into a group psychology, you know, a mob thing. You know, like when there is a problem, like somebody in the streets, you know, starts a thing, then the other say, why not? Blah! Then they start doing everybody starts doing something. It's automated behavior that is not, somebody has not thought about it. Because if I see people throwing stones, if I'm going to use my psychology, I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to pick that stone. But if I don't process my mind, nitajikuta tu nipatia hata moja, mwingine atakwambia hata kuna moja iko kwa mfuko, atanipatia you know, we are going to hit one another.
Yeah.
It is automatic psychological behavior.
Okay.
It's lack of self-control.
And earlier you did speak about choice and saying that we have a choice to either be self-controlled. But then let's talk about domestic violence, where women have a choice to leave, but they end up staying in abusive homes.
Yeah.
Please explain this to me.
You know, there are about 8 theories that explain violence. And one of them, we have just hit it. I would call it cultural reinforcement theory. The cultural reinforcement theory is rooted on societal attitude. You see now, it is like it is the society somehow has legitimized, you know, violence, especially wife beating, you know, because it has been done. It has been done. Some mothers-in-law will tell their daughters-in-law, hey, ata tunakimya tu, you know, this thing is societal. Tuliikuta na itaendelea. See, then a belief system is inculcated in an individual, which leads to something I call learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is where you say, what do I do? Actually, what do I do?
Where you feel like you're stuck in the situation.
You are stuck in the situation, and when you consult the other person, say, I am also stuck. You make a mistake of consulting me and my mother-in-law, you know, and you know something, because they say, ikitu ukambani, inajulikana, it is done off and off again. So are you to think that you are an exception? Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at it from the female side's point of view, but what about from the male point of view? This is a couple, you know, you've gone to their wedding, you've bought them gifts, they're living happily, and then one day the husband just decides to turn violent. What triggers that? What changes?
You know, when I was thinking about what I would say, I didn't think that would ask me questions that would really lead. Because, you know, when we talk about violence, we even talk about a cycle of violence. Wedding, honeymoon, kila kitu, gifts, all is well. All is very well. Then we start the home, you know, and then that is phase 1, where there is no violence. Oh my God, there is all these good things. There is, sweetie, how are you? Even people greet one another in the morning when they wake up. You know, a time comes when they stop those greetings. Because phase 2 comes in. I'm going to talk about 4 phases. Phase 2 is then where tension begins. How does tension begin? Something happens. Somebody looks at somebody's phone, sees a number or a message. You know, kitu kinaanza. You know, stress begins. You give somebody food. Oh my God, there is too much salt. There is all these other bedwork stuff and everything. Tension enhancer. You know, when tension begins to build up, then it progressively starts with, say, a bad word. Nilikuwa nafikiri wewe huko namna hii. Then somebody says, if I tell you, it's like when I met you, my eyes were closed. You see now? Then you see now? Then
it's so funny.
It starts like that. Do you know what that can lead to? A slap. Pa! Kaslap kamoja. Haya mama anasema, you have slapped me. You see? And then she will do miracles. She might topple things and do things. She might strip. I don't know what she will do.
So is this still in phase 2?
We are still in phase 2.
We're still in phase 2.
Well, no, we are still in phase 2 where tension is beginning to build. And it starts you know, now in phase 3, actually now, thank you, we have gotten into phase 3 because it doesn't announce like, hey, on your marks, we are on phase 1, we are on phase 2, we are on phase 3, get enough, we are done. So now, we are saying the ash word comes, you never add that ash word to your partner. You did not know what that ash word would do. Utaambiwa kitu kimoja, then of course things follow. I'm telling you, this can escalate into severe beating now. And severe beating, and you know, when this comes, I'm telling you, any form of communication is broken. You know, communication is where people say, "Ebu nikuulize." You know, communication is where they say, "Ebu nikuulize, can I even naweza kukuuliza swali?" You know, that's communication. You dies. That
out the window.
It flies through the window. And then now, what happens is the situation gets out of control. I'm just thinking about this thing, the episode that was in the papers. You know, we see a wedding, very nice wedding. And then we hear what followed. We see a little child discovered from the plantation. They are still looking for the others. You really wonder what happened. So this is what happened.
Okay.
Because some control was not put in place. And then now the relationship takes a crisis proportion. When it takes a phase 4, when it takes a crisis proportion, that is why one of them will say, I think this one, the way we are going, then somebody possibly reports the case to the parents or to the pastor or to a counselor, or, you know, just
in worst case scenarios to the police.
In the worst case scenario. And then I don't know whether this is true, but I understand this guy, I don't know whether light dawned in his mind, like, what have I done? The one who now rushed and was crushed.
Yeah, I mean, there's still quite a bit of speculation about that story.
Yeah.
But I want us to come back to these phases because I find them very interesting.
Yeah.
And you're saying, as a homestead, you need to identify these phases and put a control.
Yes.
But where does the control come in? Before the tension? After the tension?
If somebody is now listening, and possibly they know this is exactly what is happening, and they have just come from the honeymoon and things are not bad, not very bad, but you know, tension has started to build. Tension builds because of stressful situations. It could be money, it could be a phone call, it could be food, it could be children, it could be anything that causes stress. This is what we are saying is, when this happens, we are telling somebody, if this is not thought about, if an ideation is not brought into the mind, it will lead to the next stage, and it will automatically lead to the third one and to the fourth one.
Is there any hope for the marriages and the homes that have gotten to phase 3 or phase 4? Can you then sit down with a counselor who will guide you back?
There is a hope in any phase, even phase 4. Because what we are saying is that somebody says, lo and behold, what is happening? Like before, we don't want to go into those other heinous speculations, but let us take this family, the one that we are we have a story about. Let us take this as our hypothesis. What would have happened? Definitely, they didn't just rise into this kind of a thing. It is started, tension started to build. We are saying, when tension starts to build, we are telling families there, then lo and behold, we should prevent the eventuality if we don't put checks and balances.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously we're not saying that all of these phases will lead to some form of physical abuse, but in the event that it does, is it even possible for a woman to go back to that home and rebuild it, knowing that the husband was abusive once, or even the wife was abusive, perhaps physically, to the husband? And what stops them from doing it again? Restoration.
You know, the idea that, first of all, people should be able to go back to that time when they were courting, this time when they were married, this time when they went for honeymoon, this time when they were starting a family, when they were even saying good morning to one another. And, you know, we need to have a restorative ability, a perceptive ability to go back to where things were good and find out how can we restore that, if not even make it better.
Okay, but obviously not all situations can be restored. So how do you assess and find out, here, if I go back, I will die?
Yes, if I go back, I'll die. I will only attribute to that ideation if absolutely there is nothing we can do about this person who will kill the other.
But how do you know that? How do you know that if I go back to my husband, right now he's telling me sweet nothings, he's buying me flowers, he's saying he's sorry.
Yes.
But how do I know that if I don't go back to his home?
Yeah, that is why in phase 4, actually, you have a way of bringing out an idea. In phase 4, usually people make up. In phase 4, they bring the family, you know, the aunties and everybody, and they make up. Or the pastor comes, prays, and they delivers them from evil. You see now, you see now,
Woman is hilarious.
then you see now, it looks like, okay, but because people don't sit down to count the cost seriously, they will go to phase 1 again, and we call it a cycle of violence. What we want to stop, my daughter, is the cycle of violence, and it can be stopped. Where now, when we go, I said, we are beginning again. No, we are not going to begin again. If a man now, if a woman is afraid to go back because she's afraid this will happen again, we are telling the two now. We are telling the one who is afraid to go back, and we are telling the one who is feared because he will start it all over again, to know that it can be stopped. How can it be stopped? If, for example, I get this violent man, you know, like who is going to repeat the whole thing again, we'll talk and saying, do you know, when you got married, you never meant this. Look at what we have allowed to come in. How can we stop it in counseling? We don't give people ideas. We ask them, what do you think you can do? And we hear what they say. If they say something on the side, we say, what about this? The counselor is trained in theories, in the process of counseling, and in the stages of counseling. And we also know when people are stuck with an ideation. Why somebody doesn't want to go back, they are stuck with the thought that it will never work, but it can work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now let's have a look at children, because there's also some disturbing videos that are going around the internet. I don't know if you've seen, of a child being brutally beaten by a house help. But we also know that women, and specifically mothers, biological mothers, also turn on their own children and physically abuse them to a point where they're even hospitalized. What leads people to do this psychologically?
Do you know there is something we call learned behavior? Learned. We teach about conditioned behavior. And behavior is conditioned by it being repeated enough times. Possibly, somebody, when they are growing up in their own family as children, they have witnessed their fathers and their mothers fighting. They have witnessed their mothers eating their brothers, you know, they are automatic hitters, you know, and then it becomes conditioned. It's a conditioned behavior which has a way of repeating itself. That is why you hear people saying that things run in the families, because what you see is what you model. Yeah. It's what you become. So now this learned condition, this conditioned behavior is the one that is going to bring a repeat of the same problem. So what do we teach in psychology? We say what we have learned can be unlearned. So the same process we use to learn a behavior, we unlearn it.
And what is the process of unlearning? Because the learning one is very natural through observation, but
Thank
unlearning...
you so much for talking about the natural. Now, the unlearning is conditional, is conditioned. You think about it, you choose it, you say, I tell you the truth. I am not going to open this big mouth of mine and say that I always say. Nita, kimya, nita kata. You know, we are saying you condition yourself to not promote and perpetuate that which seems to escalate a certain behavior.
Okay.
It's choice again.
And at what point does a person go from being an inheritor of violence to becoming a psychopath, a criminal? Because not everybody who experienced domestic violence growing up becomes an abuser, or goes to the point of even killing their spouse.
You know, would I be repeating myself by saying that all this escalation of a certain behavior, even starting from being abused to being a thief to being a highway robber to being a murderer and all that, this is happening because, first of all, this is what somebody knows best, and the checks and balances have not been put to place by whoever should. There's something we teach in psychology called parenting. Parenting. You know, parenting does not mean that somebody must have a mother and a father to be parented. We are talking about people we call significant others. Significant others in somebody's life. If there is a thief in my school and this child, I know if checks and balances are not put in place, he's going to be a highway robber. The next time he's going to get a gun and he's going to shoot 24 people in Madeira. You see, now we are saying we need at this point to rescue the situation by helping somebody talk about, understand the other positive side of things.
Right.
You know, we have negative and positive side of everything. We have negative emotions, we have positive emotions. What we want to inculcate in everybody is a negative, I mean a positive, very positive ideation and emotions, which will cause people to be their brother's keeper.
Okay. And then there's, as we wind up, I'm being told we are running out of time. The women who are abused, I tend to find, you know, sexually, verbally, physically, they tend to take it upon themselves and say, it is my fault that I was bitten. Or when you go to your mother-in-law, as you said, she will ask you, well, what did you do?
That is what we call learned helplessness. What do you expect? Nifanye nini? Nifanye nini? You know, that learned helplessness is one of the worst status people can find themselves in. We must cut out of that learned helplessness and know that we have a self-esteem, we are a human being with a right to live and a life to contribute to life, and also people to contribute to my life.
But in that situation, it's very difficult to see yourself as a strong person because you've just undergone abuse.
Yeah.
So how do you shake that off?
That is why now, because the person will not do it automatically, somebody needs help. We do crisis counseling. And in crisis counseling, first of all, we help somebody to see where they are. They are really down there. But we also assist them to know that they can come from the pit and come up and be the person that they have always wanted to be. Even that helpless person knows what they want to be, only that they don't know how to be, but we can help them to be.
Dr. Ndambuki, 20 minutes. Didn't I tell you it would go fast?
I thought I was going to teach. I thought I was going to look at my notes and ask you some questions.
And yet you have all the information. Thank you very much for making time to be with us.
Thank you.
Dr. Ndambuki, psychologist, explaining the psychology of violence, specifically violence meted against women. And that is where we wrap up this edition of KTN's Morning Express. Sophia, have you heard? The day you stop saying good morning to your significant other, that is the day you realize you're entering a dangerous phase.
I know.
When you stop saying good morning, that's a problem.
Yeah. Most people, but they're bad days, Edith. They're bad days.
Even on the bad days, I suppose, just press on and say good morning. I don't know, don't look at me.
Don't feel like,
ask
but
me.
good morning. Yeah, that's a great discussion. Actually, a lot of the things she was saying is part of what we've been learning in class. I have an exam tomorrow, which is why I'm not going to be on the show because I'll be putting some of that into writing and, you know, I'll be put to remembrance. So you'll be with Edith tomorrow morning on the show, but I'll be back Friday before I head away to the holidays, and I love my job.
Okay, so before Sophia loses her job before she goes on leave, my name is Edith Kimani. Good morning. Thank you for making time to be with us. Tomorrow, same time, same place.
All right, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.